Good evening and welcome, everyone. Namaste. The subject matter of Upanishad is taking a shift. We just completed last week what was known as Shikravali. We saw the Upanishad began with the art of pronunciation and the precision and beauty involved in the Sanskritam language. That further opened our mind to finding some incredible upasana, where we're able to reflect upon the glories of nature, which integrate our mind, make us feel more at home with ourselves. Then, as we were diving further into that previous chapter, we were finding that upasana, or lighting the mind upon the phenomenon of nature, and also in the nature of one's own self, what we can objectify from the body inwards, all the way to the hridayam, the heart, created the necessary preparation or the ground for the profundity that's to come in what is known as Brahmanandavali, discovering the bliss of Brahman. So before we enter into this chapter, let's first just get a sense of comfort in our seat, just gently closing our eyes for a moment, evoking that meditative mood. Body relaxed, yet upright. Attention resting behind the closed eyes at the Brumadhya. And just spend a few minutes watching the breath. Observing the natural breath. The Upanishad guided us in the previous chapter to start to become aware of a subtle center of utmost importance. And that center was the heart. The heart is an integrated mind. That space where the ascending and descending force meet. Where we see the harmony between spirit and matter. Where the division between me and my maker goes. That center of the heart is also known as chittam, the seat of the mind. And the core of mind is desire. The main driving force of life, kama. And what I desire most is to be free from all sorrow. Be free from all sense of limitation. And this is the mystery of life. Because as Upanishad is about to present, your very nature is the limitless. Your very nature is joy itself. Aham vrikshasya rediva kirti prashtham girediva urva pavitra vajaniva samaratam dravinagum savarchasam sumedha amratokshataha iti trashankurvedanupachanam. Aham vrikshasya rediva kirti prashtham girediva पूर्वपवित्रवाजनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कुर्वेदानुवचनम् अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिपृष्ठं गिरेरिव पूर्वपवित्रवाजनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षतः इति त्रिशङ्कुर्वेदानुवचनम्. And the Rishi, to discover that peace, that deep center within you, says follow aham, that recognition that you exist, I am. Recognize the pureness of that. Aham, its glory, vrikshasya rediva, kirti prashtham giredi, the very root of creation, the very peak of all that's good. In its blissful nature. So amratamasmi dravinagum savarchasam. Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Bhararayanam Sutra Bhasha Kratau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Guruvatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavadyaptadehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace inside, peace outside, peace everywhere. Hari Om. Okay, So let us enter into the halls of Brahmananda Valley, the second chapter. That particular mantra that we chanted, Aham Brakshasya Rediva, Kirti Prashtham Girediva, that was found in the first chapter by that mysterious rishi, Trishanku. It's interesting, Trishanku means neither here or there. So it's a kind of videya, a bodiless discovery, a kind of bodiless rishi, maybe. So that particular mantra is a revelation of his insight into the nature of the spirit. So Adi Shankaracharya himself says by doing japa, repeating that mantra, it prepares the mind space, purifies the mind to receive this knowledge. This knowledge being a unique form, which gives us that deep recognition, immediate recognition of oneself. So this first mantra, the Shanti Pata in Brahmananda Valley, we just chanted. And we've been chanting this all the way through. So let us learn it together and really look into its meaning a little bit more. So I'll just chant this once more again, and then invite you to join me in chanting along. And then now we'll get a chance to really explore the depths of it. So these mantra in the Upanishad are beautiful because they're both meaningful as well as containing a kind of vibratory aspect, a kind of aspect that invokes our best healing and purifies the mind. So it's both. So here's how it sounds. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now you can repeat after me. Om Sahana Vavatu
Om Sahana Avatu
Sahanao Bhunaktu
Sahanao Bhunaktu
Sahaviryan
Sahaviryam
Karavavahai
Karavavahi
Tejasvinavadhitamastu
Tejasvinavadhinamastu
Ma Vidvishavahai.
Ma Vidvishavahi
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Great. So you can think of that request, Shantihi, 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 in several different ways. There's, of course, the natural or the traditional meaning naturally that Adhyatmakam, Adibhaudikam, Adidevikam, which we've discussed. But you can also think about, may there be peace in the past, my past mistakes, the memories that are weighing on me. May there be peace right now, and may there be peace to come. So the threefold change of time. You could also think of peace at the physical level. May my body be healthy. Then also at the mental level, may I get some resolution there. Peace at the level of body, peace at the level of mind, and then also peace in the world. So you can explore that. But the key is that chanting of these mantras are purification of mind. Purification of mind, to put it simply, means that the mind is enjoying a certain spacious or luminous quality that is experientially had as space when you interact. So rather than reaction, regurgitation, you are creatively acting. You feel that you can choose your action and play with the cards that you've been dealt. So when you have that feeling that I'm at choice more, that there's more space to choose my response to life, I would say that that's a pure mind. Another component of that pure mind is that it has a certain subtle a sensitivity to the nuances of life, the ability to deeply feel without becoming overwhelmed by that. I would call that a pass through, to be able to sense, even to sense someone else's grief, to feel it at the bodily level as a sensation, but not to be carried away and destroyed by that, becoming that, but rather to intimately share in that experience with them and move on. So, such a quality is when mind is pure. So, this mantra is to invoke that, create that purity of mind. And it's so pertinent as we enter into this study of Brahma Vidya, because Brahma Vidya is always communicated between Guru and Shishya, teacher and student. So that's why now, saha now vavatu, that now means this is going to be a joint effort. It could mean between the students in the classroom and also between teacher and student. It's a joint effort of self discovery. It's not an independent inquiry. Though you have to put forth your own self effort, your own personal effort, this final culmination of knowledge, which is equivalent to the freedom, happiness that we're seeking, is through a dialogue, a samvada. That dialogue, though the teacher may be doing all the speaking, student is always welcome to ask question. And then also when you look at it a little deeper, it's hard to find the line between the speaker and the listener, because listening is such an engaging act. It's not just mere picking up words. So the teacher's listening to the student, and the student is listening to the teacher. There's a feedback there. And um, the greatest hang up from understanding this properly is what clogs our heart. Whether it may be feeling that there's some issue with the guru or teacher, or the teacher's frustrated with the student. So this mantra is given to create a kind of environment so that our heart is open and that we have that attentive listening. So let's see what it says. It first starts with naturally that most auspicious Mangalam, Om. Om. So that Om purifies everything. We've seen that. Om iti Brahma, Om iti Dagum Sarvam. That was in the first chapter. Om is everything. Om is that Brahman, both its manifest state and also transcendental state. So Om. Now it says Sahanao Avatu. The first thing that's said is that may we both Avatu be protected. That's really important. Protection means that we feel a sense of safety in our environment and um, in the teaching space too. That's really crucial and so rare to find a particular teacher that no matter what the student says, they may be arguing, they may be fighting, they may be laughing, they may be crying, they may be acting like a fool, they may have it seemingly all together, but the teacher remains unfazed by that because they're seeing who they are behind the facade. They're seeing the true person behind it, and their heart is um, completely open to accommodate whatever the student throws at the teacher. So through experimentation, trial and error on the student's part, they're going to find that sense of safety amongst the teacher. They're going to feel that sense of the teacher's not judging me by what I do. The teacher's seeing me for who I am. That it's such a transformative experience. You may be saying something very inappropriate. Um, you may be hating the teacher, but the teacher remains indifferent to that because they still see the same beautiful you that you are, the real you. So that avatu could be understood in so many ways. Obviously, to be able to study this Vedanta, you must be having a safe environment. You must be feeling some sense of security because of your bank balance and your home, and then the walls that you're enclosed by and the food that you have. Safety is so important. It's not to be neglected. That's why we saw earlier in the Upanishad it says, Bhutyena pramatitavyam. Don't neglect your welfare. Don't neglect your funds. Because creating that environment is really important to gaining this knowledge. You have to feel okay in your space. So may we be protected together. There's so much more to that, but let's see what else is said. Sahanau punaktu. Bunaktu means nourished. May we also be nourished together. You can think of that too as what we're studying. May we feel that we're growing in the process. May we feel that we're getting something great and really enjoying the result of what's happening through our study together. Sahanau bhunaktu. Sometimes you can feel the Guru's just repeating things again and again and again. You are not the body. You are not the breath. You are not the mind. God, you keep saying that. Then you start hating the teacher, which is funny. So don't do that. We chant this mantra. That's why we always chant this at the beginning of the study. Sahanau bhunaktu. May I have that sensitivity to see what the teacher's saying and know and trust that what they're saying is for my own good. They're not saying that so I can just escape into the ether and destroy all my desires and become nothing. No, that negation is there so we can see the truth of who we are and wake up to our full splendor and then step into desire as a creative tool. So, sahanau bhunaktu, may we also be nourished. Sahaviryam karavavai. Viryam means that may we be energized. Karavavai, may we exert together and both have that aliveness and sensitivity to the Upanishadic statements. So that we could really try to find the true meaning of them together. So for the Advaitin, teaching is also part of studying and nididhyasana, meditating. The Guru meditates on the Shishya too, as the Brahman, and unfolds new dimensions of that Brahmanhood as they interact with the student. So it's not a static state in time. It's a dynamic living tradition. So saha viryam karavavahe. May we look into this text to explore its full import with a great viryam, energy. Tejasvi navadhitamastu. Tejasvi. Now, for both of us, may this study, adhitam, may it be fruitful. Tejas. Tejas actually means brilliance. Tejas. May we have that glow and gain a brilliance from this study. So the idea there too is that we actually reach the fruits of the study. The fruits here being acquisition of joy. Tejasvi, now for both of us, aditam, the study, avatu, ma vidvrishavaihi, and also ma vidvrishahi. May we also not quarrel. That kind of feeling of may there be no animosity between us, so that heart is flowing freely. It's kind of like a circuit. This teaching is unique in that the knowledge that we're giving is not something that you pick up in a book. It's a transference of energy, really. Though we're studying the definitions of the words, using all this Sanskritam, then looking into the etymology and the ontology and all these philosophical ideas, but essentially it's a transference, like a wire between the heart of the teacher and student. And so you don't want to short circuit that. There has to be a clean conductor with a free flow of energy between the two. So that's why we chant this every time. Mavid Vrishavahai. May we always have that openness and no animosity amongst one another. Peace be, peace be, peace be. Warding off that tapatrayam. So it's a universal prayer. Anyone is welcome to chant this and receive the benefits from it. So as per tradition, we chant this at the beginning of all the classes so that we feel that sense of resonance amongst one another and that line of communication is flowing. Now, let us look into the next mantra. Here may be one of the greatest proclamations or essence of Vedanta in the entire Upanishadic literature with this mantra. It's really at the heart of what it's all about. And it begins with Om. Listen up, Om. I'll chant this for us and then invite you to join me. Om Brahma Vedapnoti Param Tadeshabhyukta Satyam Jnanamanantam Brahma Yo Veda Nihitam Guhaya Parame Vyoman So Oshnute Sarvan Kama Ansaha Brahmana Vipaschateti. Okay, now you can repeat after me. Om
Om
Brahma Veda apnoti param
Om Brahma Veda Noti Param
Tadesha Bhukta
Tadesha Yukta
Satyam Jnanamanantam Brahma
Satyam Jnanamanantam Brahma
Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam
Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam
Parame Vyoman
Parame Vyoman
So Oshnute
Shoshnite
Sarvan
Sarvan
Kama Ansaha
Kaman Saham
Brahmana Vipaschateti.
Brahmana Vipaschati.
Great. If there's one mantra in the book to memorize, this may be it. So, when we started this reflection upon Upanishad, I was bringing our attention to the heart space. The heart space is a unique center, which obviously has a physical correlate, the physical heart in the center of the chest, but also there's a subtle dimension to that in which there's a place and where we feel our sense of sentiency. We feel our sense of aliveness, our sense of being a human being, a conscious person. It's the seat of the mind. And the mind is the receptacle of the light of consciousness. The light of who you are shines there and sparkles there. And by that light, it radiates throughout all the different systems of the body, shines through your eyes, your ears, your speech, that feeling that I'm alive. And in this birth, in this life, in living, all living is governed by a force. There's a driving force behind our life. And that force is subtly expressing itself as, may I always be. May I come to discover fulfillment. And in that, may I be happy. Because deep down inside, there's a creepy notion rising up that I will not always be. Because currently our sense of self is very much fused with or coupled with what we have, meaning we're very much aware that our youth is fading each day. So that brings a sense of sorrow that though there's a deep core part of me that wishes or desires or feels that I'm immortal, I know that my fate is the mortality of the body. With that comes fear and then complexes, so on and so forth. Similarly, my time is so small and limited when you think about this lifetime. It's so fast. And that feeling that there's never enough time. Haven't you said that? I just don't have enough time. I can't do it all in one day. And that because that desire to know, that desire to know and acquire and have, to be more knowledgeable. And then in all this pursuit, at the end of the day, we sink into our bed and feel, what the heck? What's it all about? What's it for? I still don't feel that right or that good. And the amazing thing is that what we're intimately seeking is exactly what we are. I always am. My nature is the very presence by which I can aware anything. Satyam Jnanam. And there's no limitation in that. Anandam. This mantra addresses that directly. So now we can say we're on the direct path. This is not an upasana, but presenting the knowledge of what is. The statement begins with something profound in that it says, Brahmavid apnoti param. There's 4 words there, and each word in its sequence is incredibly important to understand. Brahma, the first word, Vid, the second word, apnoti, third word, param. In English, it translates as the knower of Brahman attains the supreme. The knower of Brahman attains the supreme. Isn't that interesting? Brahmavid. That means the one who knows Brahman. Apnoti, they gain or they attain param. Param. So let us start with looking at what is this param. Param means the supreme. Param means the highest. Param is a very profound word, and that when we think of highest, we think of highest what? We're always thinking in terms of objects, comparing what have I seen before that's high. Param like the highness of a mountain, param like the highness of my excitement. What kind of param is that? So param, technically, this kind of reflection helps clear up our mind. When we look at these words, we're trying to understand what they're really meaning. So this word param means desha kala vastu paricheda shunyam. It means that desha means a particular space. When something is in space, it's always in one place. So it's either here or there. For example, I'm sitting in Kalamazoo, but I'm not sitting with you. So there's a limitation in space with reference to my physical body. So spatial limitation, desha. Kala means that time. We also experience division in time, meaning I'm born and then I die. There's a sequence there. Or I had it then, and then I lost it now. Time. That's another kind of division that we experience, which creates sorrow. Time factor. So desha, kala, then vastu. Anything has a boundary. Vastu means a boundedness to it, an object. It occupies a certain space in time, and it also has a certain measurable quality to it. Vastu. So there, and with the vastu, there's a choice involved. Do I want this or that? And then that object being limited has its own limitations. Paricheda shunyam. Param means it's free from all these divisions. Param means it's free from desha, space, kala, time, vastu, object divisions. Can you think of any such thing? What is free from spatial, temporal, object-bounded divisions. Anything come to your mind? It makes you quiet. Param. Brahmavid apnoti param. So it says that the knower of that Brahman, apnoti, seems to gain whatever this param is. Something that is limitless, something that has no boundary, something that is beyond time and space and beyond all form. You gain that. How do you gain that? It says by knowing Brahman. So what is Brahman? That's not, we have to know what all these words mean so that way we can think about the sentence and its profundity. What is Brahman? Brahman is defined as Brahatva, the big. There, that big is unqualified again. So when I say big, you may be thinking a big squirrel, or, or a big banyan tree, or a big 18-wheeler. So what kind of big is that? That big there doesn't have any qualification there. So that word itself indicates a greatness. Brahatva. That's where that root bra in Brahman comes from that. That's one definition of Brahman. Another is Vardhanat Brahman. Vardhanat means that it's a dynamic, living, breathing space which everything rises in. There you get the idea of spanda. Everything's just a vibratory sound playing out in a space. Then also Brahman is talked about as Vriddha, the most ancient, the progenitor of creation, if you will, the very source of creation. So these are ways of understanding the word Brahman. So when you hear that word Brahman, we're using these words because it helps refine our intellect. Our thinking process is very mixed up in spirituality. So we bring these words to help us think about the nature of reality and get clear on what Upanishad is talking about. So param means that it can't have any spatial, temporal, or object divisions. And we look at the word Brahman, and the Brahman seems to be indicating the same presence, meaning the all big. That kind of bigness there means inclusion of everything, Vardhanat. The whole world is arising in that. But it's the very source of it. Vriddha. So what's implied there? What's implied is that Brahman is the Param. Brahman is Param. So the knower of Brahman attains the Param. Meaning, what is Brahman is actually the Param. That freedom from all divisions. There we come into that vision of oneness, that unity of things. That word Param actually is none other than the Brahman. But what's a little funny here is that the Upanishad didn't say you have to work and become something to reach Brahman. It says the knower, Brahmavid, the knower of that Brahman attains Param, Brahman. So the first implication that we have to see by we're doing this mimamsa and investigating these words. The first thing that we're seeing is that the highest thing that I could possibly attain, the goal of all life, param, happens to be the nature or the same as this Brahman. So that makes me reflect on what is the nature of the Brahman. What is free from all divisions? What is not limited by space, not bound by a time factor, something that comes and goes, born and die? What is not having any sort of limitation, vastu? Vedam. What is that? What happens is that first you become deeply quiet and you start to find that there's nothing in this world that can ever fulfill that definition, whether it's a physical object or a subtle object, meaning your own thoughts, feelings, emotions, or any kind of psychic experience you could ever imagine. Nothing can fulfill that definition because it's born, it comes, then it dies, it goes. It has a boundary, whether that's a subtle boundary like a thought or a more physical boundary like the cup or book or table in front of me. So suddenly you sink into recognizing there's only one presence that can fill that definition, and that is aham, I, I, which is an existing entity and immediately experienced by you as the nature of your own self. And you're very familiar with that. So don't think, oh, that's so ethereal and cerebral, Advait. Now you're talking about funny things in spirituality. That I is so intimate to you, meaning I got up, I felt a little sleepy, I made a cup of coffee, I went to work, I had an okay day, I drove back, I was stuck in traffic, I made dinner, I talked to my spouse, I didn't have much to say, then I went to bed. But I is with you through this series of events, from that child exiting and taking the first breath, depending upon the mother, to the elder giving wisdom on their last breath when they give it up. What's common, the golden thread that unites the series of events in our life, which seems so tragic when you analyze them in a whole, is that there's something beautiful and shimmering and shining throughout it all. And that is aham, I. I doesn't have any of those boundaries when you really look into the heart of it. So this definition itself starts to make your mind collapse into its source. When you think about what is really param, how could something be what Upanishad's telling you that there's something param, that it's an existing entity. So that gives you that faith or trust that I'm not going to end up in zero. Upanishad says there's no such thing as zero. There's only one. 1 plus 1 equals 1. That's the equation. And the equation is further elucidated here by saying the knower of Brahman attains the supreme. So Brahman is supreme. But the question is how to reach the Brahman. That now you've got me inspired. Now I'm attentive because I'm feeling excited that such an entity exists and that also it seems that that's the source of all freedom. Yes, but how to reach it? Because that's not my current experience. The Upanishad brings another turn and twist here that says it's the knower of Brahman that attains that. There's another implication in that how could you possibly know and attain something? Because in all knowledge production we've seen so far in our lives, when you know something, when you know some other object, then that always requires an effort on your part to reach it. You know about something, therefore that knowing creates a desire in you. And then that desire is, should I court this object or should I avoid it? And that knowledge produces a desire to take action. And if you don't take action, you don't reach there. You don't get your desire to end. So action is involved in every knowing of something. Or you could just be indifferent, which is a kind of action in itself too. So that's called chodya chodakam in philosophy. Chodya chodakam. It means that the seeker and the sought after are separate. There's you, the paramatra, that knows the object, the prameya, what it is that you're seeking, and then you have to reach there by some means. So that means it could be you want to see the night sky. So there's you, the night sky. And what's the means to reach there? You open your eyes, you go outside. Or I have to catch a flight. I'm the guy in a hurry. The flight is my destination. And then I have to call a cab to reach there. I'm the pramatra. The flight is the prameya. And then the pramana, the means to reach that, obviously I have to take some action. Call a cab, get myself there, make sure I have my boarding pass, make sure I bring my ID, and then make sure everything's, so many ounces. Very tiny toothpaste, tiny, tiny shampoo, all that. Have to take the skill. You have to know. It evokes that knowing in terms of gaining a certain thing. You have to have the skill set and then put that knowledge into place. So that's why they say theory and then practice. But when it comes to the knowledge of joy, when it comes to the knowledge of the limitless, what is the dividing gap between you and that Brahman? The Upanishad further indicates that by saying the knower of the Brahman attains the supreme. What's meant there deeply is that the knower is also Brahman. The knower is non-separate from Brahman. Therefore, it's bodhya bodhakam sadhana, which means instead of chodhya chodhakam, we're knowing something, I have to take action, and I'm separate from that. The very essence of the knower is Brahman. Therefore, upon knowing, you gain. So knowledge is the gain there. Does that make any sense? Or is it just making your head spin? So the knowledge is the gain because the knowledge is immediate. It's about you. And you may be thinking, I know myself. Who are you to tell me who I am? You don't know my inner life. You don't know my relatives and my family and my problems and all that. That's true in a sense. But is that really you? That's the question. Are you something more than what you think? Are you something more than what you have? Upanishad is saying yes. There's a deeper you, and that you happens to be the very presence that I am, the very self that's observing the mind, the very self that lights up the universe. So here, the knowing is the gaining, because the knower and the thing to be known are non-separate. So why don't I know that? Avidya. We don't know it. That's the problem. That's called avidya, ignorance. How do I know that? Om Brahmavid apnoti param tadeshabhyukta satyam jnanam anandam brahma. It's further discussed that what we're seeking is Brahman. That seems to be indicating that the knower is also the Brahman. So tell me what that is. It says tata esha abhyukta. With reference to that, there's a particular Rik mantra. See, even the rishis are giving quotes. They're backing up the tradition. They're saying this is not some independent discovery. This is also what we are told. Tata esha abhyukta. There's a following hymn from the Rik Veda that says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahma happens to be Satyam, truth. What you're seeking is Satyam, truth. Brahman is also Jnanam, knowledge. There, that knowledge, see, there's two types of knowledge are there. There's knowledge that's produced when you have a sensate experience. You see the tree, you see the pot. There you use your eyes. That creates a vritti in your mind. And then you objectify that. You say, oh, I see it. Or it's a looking a little fuzzy. I should get my eyes checked. That's a kind of knowledge. But there's a kind of presence, consciousness by which you can know anything. That is Jnanam Brahma, consciousness. So Brahman is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, also Anantam. Anantam is the same as anandam, joy. Why joy? Is because anantam means limitless. Anantam means that there's no division in this Brahman. Much like space, the akasha or space is what contains everything. You may say, no, there's space in these four walls. There's space in the pot. There's space in my body. But when you look at that deeper, you recognize that space is not circumscribed by what thing there is, meaning the space is not locked up in that pot. The very pot is situated in the space. So that's one definition of space, is that which accommodates everything. Similarly, this Anantam Brahma, Anantam there means that which is never away from or pervading everything. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So there, those three words, typically when you define something, this is a definition of Brahman. Sometimes when you define things, to create a definition, you're trying to distinguish it precisely amongst other things. So if there's a particular lotus, for me to point it out to you, if it's among other lotuses, I would have to say, look at that lotus. Then you say, oh, which one? And then I have to say, oh, it's a big one. Okay, I see a few big ones. It's blue, big blue lotus. So those adjectives help qualify and let your mind find the object that I'm indicating. So you say, oh, yep, that one's blue. I see that one. It distinguishes among the rest. So those adjectives like big, blue, or you could say the lotus that's fragrant, all those adjectives help distinguish or define the point to that particular object. And each one of those is separate. But here, the definition of Brahman is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. There, those words are indicating the presence that Brahman is. And they're also all indicating the same entity. So Satyam is the same as Jnanam, is the same as Anandam. Satyam is technically that which doesn't change in the three periods of time: past, present, future, or waking, dream, deep sleep. What remains the same? Aham, Satyam. Then Jnanam means that very consciousness, the light that's observing all this phenomenon. Jnanam. Anantam means which has no of these divisions, like spatial, temporal, object division. So each one of those words is not an attribute of Brahman, like Brahman has some quality of Satya or some kind of quality of supreme knowledge. No, its very nature is that. That's the nature of the Brahman. So it's not like an added on thing that can be given up later. So anything you acquire, anything you can add on to your life is always incidental. You can get it and then you'll lose it. That's just how it goes. So is there a gain of something which knowing or gaining which I don't lose anything? Yes. This is the one thing that knowing which there is no more loss, which is the Brahman. That's why we're studying this, because that deep pain in one's heart from always living in acquiring and having and losing, that gain and loss becomes very weary, makes one very weary and tired. So is there such a gaining which there's no more loss? And yes, there is. That's called Brahman. Brahmavid apnoti param. The Upanishad now says, how is it done? How is that knowledge gained? Yaha, this person who Veda knows it, they're knowing it as nihitam guhayam, parame vyoman. It seems Brahman is known in the subtle space of the heart. That's what's said there. Nihitam means existing. Guhayam. Guhayam means the cave. Cave of the heart. Parame. And what kind of cave is what's contained in that cave? Parame vyoman. It seems that there's a transcendental space there. the akasha of the heart. That's why we started with that couple minutes meditation, thinking on the heart, watching the breath and reflecting upon the nature of that space. Because that heart is really where the buddhi, your keen faculty of discernment and also reason, and your passion and emotion, and your centering principle, what you care about, and all of your senses, where everything meets, where everything is in order or organized. That's the heart space they're talking about. That quiet, reflective, non reactive mind. This is the heart that we're talking about. So it's not a physical heart, it's a subtle heart. That's why Guhayam, in the cave of the heart, there's a space there. Parame Vyoman. Saha, such a person, Ashnute, realizes by gaining this knowledge, Sarvan Kaman, they realize all their desires, the Rishi says. Sarvan Kaman, Saha Brahmana, along with that Brahman. So, how can I realize all my desires? There's so many, and I have such little time. How could I fulfill all those desires? Again, what's implied there is that the mother of all desires is rooted in, may I be happy. So, that Chittam, we've seen this particular sutra reference in Yoga Sutra. It comes Hridaye Chitta Samvid. That's an interesting samyama there in that third chapter. There, the Patanjali talked about reflection on the heart space as the seat of Chittam, and then gaining that samvit or that intuitive knowledge that arises there. That intuition that's Upanishad's presenting is that at the core of my heart is that desire. Desire is a deep driving force of life. And all my desire is centered around, may I feel that fulfillment and may I be happy. So Upanishad says the knower of that Brahman, the Brahmavid, they realize all their desires. Sarvan kama ansaha, as well as the Brahman. Brahmana vipashyate. They get that, they're able to see that. Vipashyata iti. Thus it is so. Om Brahmavedahapnoti param tadeshabhyukta satyam jnanamanantam brahma yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman so oshnute sarvan kama ansaha brahmana vipaschateti. You become a seer. That's what's said here. By knowing the Brahman. So now we see the deep import of studying Upanishad itself. Because the question comes, how do I gain the knowledge? The knowledge is gained by listening, by reflecting, by meditating. So you have to be exposed to this teaching. You have to be told. There's no other way. So we find that now our work is really in gaining the knowledge, because what's implied there is gaining the knowledge, we gain the Brahman. Gaining the knowledge of Brahman is being the Brahman. The knowledge only removing our false notion, our sense of limitation, and recognition of our own innate joy that we are, which is not dependent on anything. You're free. So this is really the essence of Upanishad. And also, this particular mantra defines what the nature of Brahman is. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Just like we've heard too before, Satchidananda, or maybe more familiar with that, Satchidananda. So here, that Satchidananda is the same. There's Sat, Chitta, and Anandam. It's the same as Sat, Jnanam, Anandam. Satyam Jnanam Anandam. So we'll close here with a prayer, and you have to reflect on this word Brahman. Let that word go deep into your mind. Dream of the dream of it. and let it fill your life. What is that big we're talking about? What is that which includes everything? What is that space which the whole world is situated in, arising and collapsing? Yeah.
This Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, is it not one of the Mahavakyas?
Not technically, to my understanding, because it's not making Satyam Jnanam Anantam is more of a statement, pointing a definition to the Brahman versus making an identity statement.
Okay. Like Tattvamasi or one of those.
Yeah, yeah. Like I am Atma Brahma, where there's a unity between the two. So that will come. So this is more a contemplative tool, reflecting on the reality. So now you have those words to think properly about what really is the Brahman. Brahman is that which never changes, Satyam. Brahman is that light of consciousness, Jnanam. Brahman is never away from anything, Anantam. So it really prepares mind for hearing that Mahavakya. So, okay, we'll close here with a prayer. And what we're going to see is immediately Upanishad presents. So, knowing that, having that faith and that trust and getting into that vision of this whole, this Brahman, then Upanishad never takes us to the peak without also coming back down and reintegrating. So, we're going to see in the following mantra, we'll reflect a little bit more on this. The following mantra also shows the descent, if you will, how the Brahman becomes many, how there's this one ever present, undifferentiated presence, this being. But what about the world? I still feel I'm here in the world. So please tell me how that is. So Upanishad shows you how that Brahman then expresses and manifests as the world. Then immediately after that, we're going to have the ascension again. We're going to see what are the subtle steps to see the truth that I am that. So that's called the Tattva Utpatti, means the manifestation from Brahman down to the creation. And then also the Tattva Viveka, the way back up. And that's going to be done through something called Panchakosha Viveka, which means discerning and recognizing all the places where I seem to let my eye rest. My sense of identity gets confused with several different personality layers. So we're going to do an in-depth dive of those layers, see their beauty, see the knowledge that's gained by even reflecting on them, the boons that one gains by deep reflection on just one of those layers, and then also how we transcend them. So that transcendence is done there through a process of watching and then creating space, detaching, then seeing the relationship properly. So that's called Panchakosha Viveka. We'll see 5 different personality sheaths. They're only a sheath because we seem to be letting ourselves get confused or identify with that versus using it as an instrument. So we'll see those to come in depth. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om. Namaste, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Be well. Reflect on this Brahman. Let that word be as Puja Swamiji says, he always calls it a chewing gum. You munch on that and let it really fill your mouth. Get all the flavor out of it. And then that also prepares the mind to think really clearly. And that peaceful space is really that heart space where this knowledge dawns. So, namaste.